Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and Inscale, and welcome to episode 7. So this episode we're going to be talking about lighting and valance on the Sayrehurst secondary, and I'm also going to do a little how-to project for you. So let's get started. Lighting. Lighting can have a profound effect on your layout room and take your layout from this to this. So let's talk about lighting. Lighting has been a hotly contested debate in the model railroading world for generations. There are so many different options for lighting in your layout room. You can use incandescent bulbs, you can use complex fluorescents, you can use fluorescent ballasts, or you can even use the new LED technology. Now here on Central Jersey Conrail and Inscale, we're not going to get into that debate. We could make an hour-long episode and still not accomplish much. What it boils down to is each individual person has to decide what attributes they're looking for in their lighting. Do they want dimmability? Do they want cost? Do they want to reduce heat? All these factors have to be taken into account when choosing your lighting systems. So here on the Sayrehurst secondary, I've decided to use fluorescent ballast lights. I came to this decision by considering a couple factors. First was cost per linear foot of lights. Second was the availability of the equipment. And third was heat buildup. Fluorescent ballasts don't generally build a good amount of heat. And lastly, the decision in this factor was the color of the bulbs. I wanted to choose a good color to represent daylight, so when I'm doing photography and videography down here in the layout room, it produces a good background light. So as you can see, the lighting here on the Sayrehurst secondary is installed and it's working. I'm not going to show you how I installed the lights. I am, however, going to give you some tips and suggestions. First, if you're going to install the lighting yourself, please follow all your local building codes. These codes are written in blood. The codes are not there to make your life difficult. The reason you should follow all these building codes and use the proper equipment when you're installing your lighting is because you don't want to start a fire. This is the layout room in the basement of my home. My family lives upstairs. I don't want to cause a fire and cause someone to get hurt or possibly killed because I built the lighting in my layout room to try and save money and time. Next, if you're not comfortable with working with household electrical equipment, I highly recommend that you seek the advice of a contractor or possibly hire a certified electrician. Okay, so now that I gave my little PSA on electrical and lighting installs, let's go over the equipment I used. I used a 48-inch fluorescent ballast light made by a company called Lithuania. They're available at Home Depot and they're approximately $19 a unit. I also used Philips 6500 Kelvin daylight bulbs in those ballast lights. As you can see, it produces a very nice light. It's very close to daylight, and I'm very happy with the lighting. So as you can see, the lighting changes the layout room dramatically. So whether you're modeling a 4x8 or 40x80, if you take the time to choose good lighting for your environment, it will change the layout. So with that being said, we're going to move on to our next topic, the valance. I've yet to install the valance. I'm going to show you guys how I did that. But first, what is a valance? A valance blocks the light and redirects it. So this way that the light's not shining directly in the eyes of the observers of the layout. Also redirects the light and kind of gives it more of an ambient look. Just as you would have valance on your curtains, which hide the curtain rods, the valance is going to hide the ballast lights and all the wiring that's up there. So that's what the purpose of a valance is. So why don't we take a look at how we install it.
So here we are starting construction on the valance. My valance is made up of 1/8 inch hardboard, 2x2s, 1x2s, and 1x4s. Here I'm attaching the 2x2s to the ceiling joists above. The ceiling joists run perpendicular to that wall that's in front of us. And the 2x2s just serve as a base to mount the tempered hardboard up. Next I'm going to be using PL Premium on the 2x2s. This is just to give the hardboard a little extra bond to the 2x2s. And then I'm following up with sheetrock screws to hold it in place. Makes for a nice tight bond and fit. So initially I hadn't planned on any kind of support structure. I kind of wanted the hardboard to just hang off the 2x2s, but I found that it was too floppy and needed some rigidity. So here I'm building a framework using 2x2s and 1x2s attached to the ceiling. And in this slide you can see that's how it was constructed. So it's important when you're putting up your valance is to plan your joints. If you notice, my joints are on a flat section, they're not on an actual curve. You need to do this, otherwise it's going to be very difficult making up nice smooth joints. Also, if you notice, I'm using 1x4s to back up my joints. This way I can screw it all together. There's enough room, because if you try to use a 1x2 it just wouldn't be enough room to put all the screws in. All of the tempered hardboard is cut to 20-inch sections. Also, I put my cut ends up against the ceiling, and I put my factory cuts on the bottom. This way the bottom's nice and straight, because I was only using a circular saw to make my cuts. And even though you'll see some little light leaks and stuff, we'll neaten that up in the end. Here in this scene you can also see that with these curves, the hardboard has a tendency to want to bow out, and that's another reason to have all this support structure, just to keep it nice and even and look straight. So here we are starting the construction of the valance on the end of the peninsula. This by far was the most challenging part of this whole construction process, was putting up this piece of valance work by myself. I am a lone wolf modeler. I work on my own, so it helps when you stop and think and plan out how you're going to put it all together. It just makes it that much smoother and that much easier. I mean, up until this point it looks fairly simple, but I've edited a lot of mistakes and cursing and breaking stuff. I just edited that out, so just to make a more seamless video, but it was a very challenging build. So this was another one of those areas that I thought the model railroading gods were going to help me and support this floating piece of valance, but it was quite a lot heavier than I expected, so I had to build another support structure on the end here, and that's what I'm doing in this scene. And you'll see in the next clip how it looks. So at this point now, I've really got my system down, and now it's moving a lot quicker and a lot easier. And so from here, we're just going to watch it go together. So in these last couple scenes, you'll notice that I used a 2x2 that I was kind of putting up against the standing upright into the ceiling, and that was just to mark the edge of my bench work so that the valance wasn't too far outside of the boundaries of the bench work or too far in. Another thing when you're putting up your valance is those bar clamps really come in handy, especially when you're working by yourself. So very handy to have around. So in this scene here you can see that the ceiling is a little wavy. Again, there's some more leaks there where the light's shining through, but I'm not worried about it. We're going to neaten it up in the end. So here you can see those boxes that I'm covering with the valance. Those are ductwork that I had to box out when I was building the layout room. So that kind of dictated the 20-inch valance to make sure that I covered those boxes. I'm using a little spackle bucket there to keep all my screws and stuff in, so I don't have to keep getting down off the ladder to find stuff. Okay, so while we're watching the last piece of Valance go up, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the next scene. The next scene you'll see I start prepping the surface. I start sanding all the joints down with a palm sander. Okay, so I made sure that all the screws were down flush with the tempered hardboard. Now I'm just going over the joints with a palm sander, make sure they all lay flat. And this is important so when we start our spackle, we don't have to use a lot of spackle and create a lot of dust from sanding. Okay, so here I am starting the first of 3 coats of spackle. And this first initial coat is just to put up our tape and also to cover up some of the screw holes. I didn't film all 3 coats, just wanted to keep it simple. So after your initial coat of spackle, you want to do 2 more good coats, and then you're going to come along with your 3rd and final coat, which is very thin, really smooth coat. And the reason you're doing that is because as you're spackling these joints, you're going to notice there's a lot of pits and fissures, and you're going to use that thin coat to fill it all in and make it nice and smooth so they don't show up when you go to paint. Okay, here we are starting to prime the valance. I'm just using a primer and sealer, just like you would on a sheetrock. You can notice here I'm putting my hands in the paint and wiping it off. It's because I'm getting these chunkies out of the bucket, so I just want to make sure I get them off before the primer dries, because I don't want that drying, because I'll make bumps and irregularities in the final paint. So while you're putting up your primer, you should be looking at your joints and making sure that your joints kind of disappear into the primer. They shouldn't stick out. And if they do, you need to stop and go back, re-spackle, re-sand. Because once you get that primer up, if you have to make any changes to the spackle, it's going to be very difficult to sand off all that paint. And just on a personal note, I keep looking down at the ground. That's because my little 2-year-old daughter is in the train room helping me. She makes it fun. So at this point in the construction process, I can really see it starting to come together. The picture that I had in my head, it's there in front of me, and it's kind of hard because I keep stopping to my work and admiring what I've done so far. Okay, so here I'm going to teach you a really good trick. I've learned from a lot of contractors that the way to hide mistakes is with caulk. If you go walk around your house and you look at all your baseboard trim, you'll notice that all the gaps and everything is all done with caulk. And it kind of hides it, makes it all look nice and neat and finished. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using a fast dry caulk that you use for baseboard trim. I'm just going along the seam and filling in all these gaps, and you notice that's why I'm filling in all those light leaks so the light doesn't shine through. Also, I've looked everywhere and I've asked everybody what's the best tool to use for doing caulk, and they all say the same thing: a wet rag and your finger. Just use your finger, you can shape it the way you want it, and it comes out nice and perfect. Okay, so here we are starting our final coat of paint. What I'm using here is a Benjamin Moore ceiling paint. It's the same color white that's already on the ceiling. And so I'm also going to you'll see I'll be covering up all the marks and stuff on the wall, on the ceiling for construction. Okay, so I've chosen white for my valance. I've kind of gone against the conventional thinking of do your valance in dark and your fascia in dark so that it looks like a picture frame. First time I saw this was a couple months ago in Model Railroader. There was a gentleman who did his valance white, and I really liked the way it looked. It was very organic. It blended in with the ceiling and kind of just existed up there, and it didn't stick out. So very happy with the color choice, and it's looking really good. So as the final coat of paint's going up, now you can see that caulk. I'm painting over the caulk with the white. This prevents the caulk from yellowing over time, and it looks really clean and really neat. You don't see that light shining through anymore. So, okay, so one last note while we're watching the last sections of paint go up. I did paint the back of the valance with a white paint, and that was to reflect some more light off of the fluorescent lights. I found it seemed a little bit dim from the brown on the backside, and when I painted it, you may not be able to notice on camera here, but actually you can see it in the layout room when you're there. It is a lot brighter, so it was well worth it. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching the valance go up, and I hope you picked up some tips to use in your layout room.
Okay, so we're getting down to that phase here on the Sayrehurst secondary where we're going to start putting track down. But before I can start putting track down, I'm a visual kind of person, and I need to visualize how the track is going to interact with the scenery and the structures around it. Now, I don't have time to scratch build and put together kits of the structures that I need to interact with the track work, so I'm going to do the next best thing. I'm going to mock up some buildings using foam core board. So this is a quick and easy process to put together a relatively undetailed version of the building that you need, just to see dimensionally how it'll fit on the layout. So the first structure I've decided to mock up is going to be the Englishtown Fire Department. The reason I've chosen this structure for you guys is because it's a prefabricated steel building that was built in 1994. It doesn't have very much detail on the outside. It's very utilitarian, so it'll be very easy to mock up. But before we can begin this process, we need to do our research. So I've already gone ahead and got some pictures off the internet. I've also gotten some measurements, and I've made up a rough sketch. So this way I have all the measurements all laid out before me, and it makes the process go a little easier. Okay, so before we begin, let's get our tools together. We're going to need some Scotch Blue painter's tape. We're going to need a hobby knife with a good sharp blade. We're going to need a straight edge, and we're going to need a square. All right. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is I got my foam core that I bought at Staples. I'm going to lay a baseline here, a reference line to start with. I'm going to make sure I'm square to this edge over here, and then I'll base all my measurements off of that, so then everything should be square when I lay it out. Okay, so we're back, and as you can see, there's a lot more lines on the board than they're supposed to be. That's because I totally messed up from the beginning. I was making the building 89 feet tall. So anyway, I've gone ahead and drawn out my sides. Here's my two sides of the building. Here's the front and the back, and then this will be the roof over here. So let me get my hobby knife and my straight edge. I'm going to go ahead and get cutting on this stuff, and it'll start to make a little more sense when I do. Okay, so there you have it. I went ahead and cut out all of our components that we need. This is the roof, the front and the rear. And these are the two sides. Now, I also took the time to go ahead and using Google Maps, I went ahead and plotted out the basic property lines for the fire department. And I already can see that this is going to be way too big. So that's good. But we're going to go ahead and leave it like this, and we'll wait till we start laying track, and then we can always chop it down. So, all right, let's go to the bench now, and we're going to start. I'll show you how to put it together. Okay, so now you can probably see where I'm going with this. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the my square, use that to square up the edges, like so. I'm just going to take some blue painter's tape. I'm going to tape it on the inside. Don't forget, this is just a temporary structure, so we don't have to build it like it's going to last 100 years. So that's why I'm just using tape on the inside. It's going to kind of be a little flimsy, but once we get it mounted on the board to hold it, it'll kind of hold itself together. Okay, and so there you have it. There's the building sitting on the plot plan. So we're all set to go, and I can already tell from my mock-up, and I haven't even gotten too far, is that this is going to be way too big for the area that we're going to put it in. So we're going to be having to cut down on some of probably the property in the back and whatnot. But hey, that's what we're doing it for. We're mocking it up so we know how it's going to fit. So, all right, so that's going to put a wrap on episode 7. We got a lot done. We got our lighting up. We got our valance up. We're starting to mock up buildings. We're starting to think about track planning. Next time, episode 8, we're going to paint the sky and we're going to start working on the staging yard. So I hope you guys are following along. I hope you guys are learning some stuff. If you are, click that like button. Also, we're looking for subscribers. So if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.